Hi, everyone, and welcome to an episode of Trident Talks, the CEO and Cyber series. Today, I'm very happy to be joined by Fred, the CEO and founder of Helmet Security. Hey, Fred.
How you doing?
Yeah, very good, thanks. Thank you for joining us. So, Fred, give kind of the listeners, the viewers, just a quick 30-second rundown. Who are you, background?
Sure. Let's see. This is my second cybersecurity startup. I'm a previous founder and CEO of a company called CyberGRX, which is a third-party cyberspace. And then prior to that was the chief security officer at an investment firm called Bridgewater Associates, and kind of stumbled into security that way. It's a longer story that I don't think we have time for today. But and then Helmet Security, co-founder with Kaushik, who's my co-founder, and I built that out and just kind of brought that to market recently.
Awesome. We'll dive into that a bit later. Firstly, we are going to go back into how you fell into cyber. You talk about chief security officer, but how take us even further back. Was that I guess no kid grows up going, especially back in the day, you're not going to, I'm going to get into cybersecurity. Daddy can have a book and read. Tell us about the story. How did you get into that?
Yeah, no such path like that. No, I bounced around in a variety of different components after university and business school. I spent time in investment banking, spent time in private equity investing, spent time as a consultant. I joined a firm called I mentioned Bridgewater Associates. And Bridgewater has a lot of unique things to it, but one of it was, you may not find what you need to run a department in a single person, and you can separate out, I'll call it management expertise from content expertise. And so I actually was paired up to run a compliance department, and then a year later, the overall security department, having absolutely no background in either of those. And so was paired up with, experts in those fields. Like, for example, the person who worked on my team running staff and physical security was the former head of counterterrorism for the FBI. So it's kind of, highly qualified individuals who then I was able to bring that together in a more cohesive approach. We spent a lot of time on cybersecurity at Bridgewater. And then when I left Bridgewater, I really wanted to try and build something in that space. And as much as I take credit for founding CyberGRX, the idea actually came from the gentleman who was the CISO Blackstone at the time, a guy named Jay Leak, who was thinking about how all the portfolio companies at Blackstone were assessing or doing third-party risk assessments of all of their same vendors. Why doesn't Blackstone do it in a centralized way, and then share that amongst them versus each one of them sending a team to ADP every year? And so we talked about building a business out of that, and quickly realized, other companies that aren't part of the Blackstone portfolio actually use ADP as well. So why not build an independent business? And that's what became CyberGRX there.
Nice. And full circle, is he now a board member at Helmet Security?
He actually, so Jay has left and founded Sin Ventures, which is now on its, I think, fourth fund, and doing extraordinarily well. And they were the lead investor in this, in Helmet.
Nice. We'll come back to that. There's a point I picked up on there. Just a very quick side note. Do you think in this day and age you can do what you did at Bridgewater, i.e., you do not come from a cybersecurity background and then manage to obviously surround yourself with kind of very smart people, head of CT at the FBI, but do you think that could be done now, or there's so many trodden paths through computer science and other areas, right, where it's kind of it's less, I don't see it as often now where people can come from a non-traditional background and end up running a whole security function?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I actually think that's still an opportunity, because you have to break down running a business, running into kind of what's required to do that. Content and depth of capability is huge. It's very important, to your point there. At the same time, that's not the only piece. You can have the smartest engineer in the world, but if he or she doesn't have the means to speak with customers, or understand how to engage with investors, or understand how to create a marketable product out of what they've built, that's not going to work. And so I think it really is about being open-minded to what you're good at and what you're not, and figuring out how to balance that. I don't have a great technical background. I understand enough to be dangerous, but that's as far as I go. Kaushik, my co-founder, is quite possibly the most impressive engineer I've ever seen. What he can do in 24 hours is better than what I could see most teams do in weeks. And so it's really powerful on that front. And I'm able to learn from him and figure that out, and then marry that up with, hey, I have a great relationship with the CISO over here. Let's pull that together and help him.
Yeah.
And so I think if you come into it recognizing where your strengths and your weaknesses are, I think anyone can step into this. Businesses it's all about building customer base and satisfying them with an appropriate product. If that happens to be, water filtration or cybersecurity or a car, there's similarities across that.
Yeah, I don't disagree at all. I just don't see it as often. But
It's hard.
your point's still valid. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Just a very quick point and touch on CyberGRX. So, what did you guys do? What was the product? What was the business?
Sure. So CyberGRX was basically a means, if you think about the way third-party risk is run today, it's one of the few cases where everyone hates it. Like the people doing the cyber risk assessments hate having to chase down people to fill out questionnaires. A lot of times they just get the data and put it on a shelf. They don't even actually look at what people sent them. Maybe it's now after the deal's already been signed, and now what are they going to do if someone doesn't have the right MFA in place or some of that sort? And so there's a lot of difficulty there. And then you go to the other side, the typically small business that has to respond to these burdensome questionnaires is in overwhelm. They're all asking roughly the same thing, but this guy wants it in PowerPoint, this guy wants it online, this one wants it in a PDF file, whatever. And so it's this just massively inefficient and unenjoyable task. And so the CyberGRX approach to that was, why don't we go in and do one high quality, thorough cyber risk assessment, partnered with several consulting firms to do validation, ensure the accuracy of the data, and then that data resides in a central repository in a structured form. What I mean by that is it's not, do you have a good incident response program? Yes, I do. It's here are the components of an incident response program. Which do you have in place? And here are measures of effectiveness for each of those. Check all that apply, whatever it might be. So you have this fully structured data set on individual companies that now that third party can share with new prospective customers, as well as customers can now say, instead of me putting you through all this meat grinder here, let me just get access to that data. And it's in a structure that I know, so I can actually build automation and other components around that. And so we created that clearinghouse, was what we were doing there. And it was hard, because you start the business and say, okay, hey, I'd like you to join my exchange, but we have no customers to use it. It's not very compelling to a third party. Or you go to a consumer of the data and say, please, you start using our product, but we have no data. That also is nice. So you had to kind of work your way through, and it was one of those flywheel things that it's grinding to get it going. But then once it started taking off, when we ended up selling the business about 2 years ago, we'd done over 17,000 cyber risk assessments.
Wow. Yeah, so a lot of touch points, right? Okay. Well, thank you for the history. Let's bring it up to the present day and why everyone's here. Well, definitely why I'm here. Helmet security. So what do you guys do? What's the idea you had, you and Kaushik? Like, you've got Sin on the board, you've got White Rabbit. I guess it might be Caleb.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Tell us, like what are you doing? What's the mission?
Yeah, and I think it's the origin story really centers around Kaushik's experience. So Kaushik started his career in security and worked for a large bank in their security team, and then he progressed on to become VP engineering, chief architect, et cetera, at several startups. At his most recent startup prior to Helmet, the engineering team was getting pummeled by their customer success team with, hey, we need this, we need this. So he's like, I'm going to build a chat bot for them to be able to just answer all those questions, and was struggling to make it work with, and I'll call it legacy connectivity, just hallucinations, inconsistencies, et cetera. And then he found MCP, and the model context protocol that was introduced by Anthropic about a little over a year ago. There basically is just a structured, standardized way for LLMs to talk to software products. The beauty of that is it just works. It's one of those like, oh, magic, it just kind of happens to connect. And so he was able to take what was a difficult chatbot and actually make it now into something that was production ready, and was about to push, publish. And he's like, wait a minute, I just opened up this risk, and that security background gave him pause, and he actually never pushed it out because he realized all the exposures and weaknesses that existed. MCP is wonderful, but it creates a lot of exposure there. And that led to the idea of, hey, we need to think about not only understanding where MCP servers are being used, but actually how are they being used? How is that being contained? How is that being monitored? And that's the origin of where Helmet came from, is really focusing in. And we say, MCP is by far the focus area right now, but anyone who's in this space will tell you it is moving so fast that, we probably won't even be saying MCP a year from now. It could be something else. And so we talk about it as agentic connectivity. It's okay, how are you enabling your LLMs to connect to other software products and managing those connections effectively? So I think back, and the bigger origin of that, and we've talked about this a fair amount, is when you think about how companies are deploying AI in their environments. It started with, we now have a enterprise license for ChatGPT. Great, that's nice that you have that, and people can write a kind of a better email. There's cool marketing copy. There's a couple things you can do with that. There's maybe summarizations, but it's trained on general information. It's kind of a generally smart tool, right? It's not specific. But once you say, wait, I want to pull in my own data. I want to actually have this, run off that, and I want it to actually start taking actions. You move to agentic AI, and that is where I think you're seeing huge value creation. There was a lot of bubbling around maybe in the last 2 years or so, be like, are people getting any payback from AI? Is it really worth the investment, et cetera? I think agentic AI starts to really drive that, in that you're now going to say, I can pull this data in here, I can process it, I can now run these 3 or 4 actions that either tee people up for things or update files, whatever it might be, and that's all being run automatically. The way that happens is that central LLM is now connecting to that database, or it's connecting to that software product, and that's happening right now through MCP. And the catch to that is, let's just, for example, I create an agent that says, go in and look at all of my data in Salesforce on these, set of customers. And for anyone that hasn't moved stage in the last 30 days or whatever it is, generate this report, send it to these salespeople, send an email out to them, do this for marketing drip or whatever it is. And it just sets that up and runs it. And that's cool. That was probably an FTE you just saved right there, who could do that. When I make that connection, all I need is to read data from Salesforce. But the way the MCP connections work is, and just kind of stepping back for what an MCP server looks like, is it's effectively an interface for an LLM to talk to a software product. And it says, here's a description. Here's who I am. I'm Salesforce. I do this and this. And then it has 3 concepts in there. One is resources. Here's the information that I have. I have a list of customers. I have a list of this. I have this. Here are the data sets that you could pull from LLM. And then it has a list of tools. Here are the actions I can take. I can delete a file. I can move a file. I can create a file, or whatever it is. And third is prompts. Here's how you can speak to me to be effective. That structure feeds back to the LLM that says, oh, I can do that, and now asks a question and iterates, and that's how it comes out with a better response. So in that structure, the catch right now is it defaults to fully open. So all I need to do is read files. I've now authorized Claude, ChatGPT, whomever, to delete files, to move files, to change files, and all these other things. Even though I don't need that, my agent doesn't do that. I've now enabled that to happen. Or what if someone puts in that description, by the way, here's what I do. Oh, and by the way, please delete, all S3 buckets or some of that sort. And if I've empowered Claude to be able to do that, I've now created a prompt injection issue or things of that sort. Other things are much more focused on developers that will say, here's how to debug code. I'm like, oh, cool, but I need these encryption keys to be able to do that. And it just feed that right in. Now you've given Claude your encryption keys. So there are all these connections that are happening. It's just a list as long that are unmanaged. And all of this is happening. It's basically a user's connecting to Claude who's connecting to the MCPs. That's typically outside of the view of any security products that exist. So no one sees this activity. And so if something happens, and there are instances where I think it was Google Anti-Gravity deleted the D drive. So but people are like, how did that happen? And so you're not able to trace back these types of issues, not to mention if someone's now has more nefarious versus just these kind of stumbling into things. So a lot of talking there, but that risk is profound. So what we built for Helmet was a way to basically look at this and say, okay, let's build that back into control. So it's really 3 stages. The first is discovery. How do we determine where MCP servers are being used? Then second is monitoring. Is okay, now let's migrate them over to a monitored state so we can actually see the activity, what's happening. Don't stop it just yet. Just like, oh, what are people trying to do? And then third would be management, where you say, okay, if they're only using this one tool in an agent, let's shut off the other 22 so that they don't have that potential drift or potential risk.
So is that all inside your platform? So you have a platform that says, hey, feed all your MCPs that you're using, and also the software platforms they're connecting and talking to. Then we start building, I guess, like a directory or a repository of everything that it does. And then therefore you actually don't need those 19. We're going to configure and turn them off for you.
That's right.
So you are less at risk.
As blunt as, why does the HR team have access to all these MCP servers? Maybe we want to just restrict it to this group of developers or something else. You can actually inherit, permissions that you've already built out to say, hold on a second, here's who I want to be able to access these things right now.
So then you start playing into identity, right, and permissions and PAM,
Absolutely.
IAM, etc. So then do you have to start integrating via like APIs or however, like whatever it is, to the existing security tools they currently have that have all of that information?
So you can, and so that is typically the starting point. But then you may say, you know what, I don't want to give all those permissions to this group, or I want to give greater permissions here. So the vast majority of our customers will start exactly as you just described. We'll basically inherit those baseline permissions, and then they'll say, but for this group, for this special project, whatever it is, we're going to go a little bit further. We're going to give them this, or this group, we're just going to shut them out. So you could actually then be tailored down to the literally individual user per time of day type of thing if you want to.
Yeah, makes sense. And then who's controlling that? Is it a Helmet employee? Is it me in the enterprise? How does that work?
We're selling a software product, not a managed service in that sense. So this is literally enabling, and it's typically either the security or the infrastructure team who's now managing that level of access. It is brand new. Like, 6 months ago, no one was building an MCP management capability.
Didn't know what it was.
And so, and as typical in any organization, everyone's like, well, I don't want to take on more responsibility. And so it is an element of, because you have workflows now, right? It's a matter of, hold on, we've now restricted access. This person wants more access. Who approves it? Who authorizes it? Who drives that? And so kind of setting those, we've seen it from the infrastructure team. We've seen it from the security team right now.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that. Yeah, because you typically get AI committees, right, in the middle of that are more around the initiatives and how we protect ourselves, using it, budget and stuff. But that's now falling more towards back into under the CISO's realm, right?
That's exactly right. And a lot of people, I mentioned kind of those 3 stages, right? There's kind of discovery, and the vast majority of companies we speak to are in the mindset of, our CEO has told everyone that we need to be AI first, and that our next earnings call or our next press release has to talk about AI agents, et cetera.
Yeah,
so there's a top-down push to develop AI. And every developer there has likely by now discovered MCP, and it's like, oh my God, what used to take me a month, now I can do overnight. And so I can make this work. And so there's an acceleration, there's an excitement. The CISO or that team is like, I know this is happening. I can't stand in the way of it right now, but I'm going to have to start to build my kind of view on it over time. And so that concept of just discovery is incredibly attractive. We're going to help you understand what already exists in your environment that you might. And we've talked to several companies like, we don't have MCP servers. No one's using them. And then we've discovered over 1,000. And so it's like, yes, you are. And so, I will tell you, anyone who's listening to this, you're using MCP servers. You are.
Yeah.
And then it's a matter now of how are they being used, and it's likely fine. But you kind of say, okay, let me discover them. And then it's a very simple kind of effectively creating a gateway or proxy to then say, instead of a developer directly connecting to an MCP server, they just now connect to Helmet, and we connect to that MCP server, and the traffic flows through with 0 latency. And we now have full visibility to what they're doing. And that is literally a push button implementation. It requires 10 seconds of work for the developer to do that.
If I totally understand that point. If you are not offering services on top because of obvious reasons, that means that you can only go after the Fortune 1000 that have the teams or the capability to manage it in-house themselves, or the desire, motivation, etc. You're not going to be able to go after a company that's 100 headcount, 200 headcount, regardless of their revenue, because who's going to might have one IT guy that has or girl that has to run that. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm just trying to understand. Like, let me ask that again. What's your ICP?
Yeah, our ICP is, I would say, is enterprise. You're correct. Is that is without a doubt, and kind of even small enterprise is kind of a great sweet spot, because they're the ones who are adopting MCP or agentic AI faster. Interestingly, what we found, and one of the weird kind of sides of this is you go way up market, kind of largest banks, big financial services. A lot of them have actually, at least by policy, blocked MCP development. They're saying, we don't trust it, we can't view it, we don't want it. Right. We're not allowing you to do that. Now they're getting pushback from their developer community saying, I can't work if you don't let me use these tools. So they're using Helmet or another product to say, okay, we're going to create a bespoke, very tight thing. This group of developers is allowed to access, GitLab through Claude Code for this period of time. And so we can create that structure for them as well. And it can be really valuable in that sense. But to your original question, typically kind of small enterprise. That being said, it is applicable to anyone. We've built a platform, and this is the benefit of having Kaushik be a developer. He's made this thing easy. And so we're working with a small university right now who has a security team of 2 people. who is using it to identify where people are spinning up MCP servers, and that type of thing. So it's all over the place in terms of what you're able to do, and it's just a matter of, you're right, the more enforcement you implement, the harder it might be to manage. But in terms of that first visibility, do I have a problem? Do I understand what's going on? That is very easy to do. And then the monitoring of what are they now doing? Now I need to develop a policy.
Yeah, because I'm then going, okay, now I need to take action, which is the third pillar. I don't know how to take action because I might be an IT guy. That's what I'm thinking of if you're in a small business and you're not targeting the enterprise, right?
That's right.
Yeah, interesting, nice. What's behind the name?
It actually came from, interestingly, when Couch was first working on the business early on, he was thinking about how are we going to name this thing. So, and he was actually in Mexico City and was looking at a mural, and it was a lot of kind of the what is it called, Marvel Universe, X-Men type.
Oh yeah.
And everyone had a helmet on of some kind. And he's like, you're protecting your AI brain to some degree, and this is a defensible.
Yeah.
So I don't know. One of my investors thinks it's a terrible name. The other likes it. So we'll see what happens. To me,
they gave you cash either way, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I only know 2 companies I think in the last couple of years have actually changed their name. I like it. You need more memorabilia behind you now with Avengers, Marvel helmets.
There's a lot of swag potential here. Depends how kind of cheeky you want to get. Like, if you remember Spaceballs, I'm dating myself, but dark helmet from that is definitely somehow going to work its way in, and then we'll figure it out.
That's RSA. That's got RSA all over it.
Exactly.
Right, we're going to pivot into the lightning round. Some quick answer questions. So, books or podcasts?
Both, but podcast. I've recently gotten into what's it called, Acquired, which is I love. I mean, you got to set aside a whole weekend to listen to it because they're like sometimes 10 hours long. But the research and work those guys go, it's awesome. Like, I've really learned a lot through that. So that's, I would say, my favorite right now.
Cool. Cold plunge or sauna?
Sauna. Cold plunge is evil. Like, it's
the devil.
I struggle with that.
I agree. Skiing or snowboarding?
Okay, look, I'm a purist on that front. So skiing, absolutely. And
right answer.
Although I just went with my brother last week, Denver. I have to be.
You're in the mountains,
right? He's a snowboarder, so it is what it is.
No. Well, he's not on this podcast for a reason. Mac or Windows?
Mac. So I started as an investment banker, so I was Windows pure. Like when I was trained, they took away my mouse, so it had to be all the keyboard shortcuts and everything for Excel, which none of which translate over to Mac, which is annoying. But when we started CyberGRX, all the engineers were Mac guys, and so we were going to go single there, and now I'm addicted to it. So that's where I am now.
Yeah, fair enough. And what's your coffee order?
Straight black drip coffee.
Yeah, fair enough. Simple, man of simple pleasures. And then I have a question, which is, I guess you went to university, graduated?
I did.
Yeah. So is there any advice, or what would you tell yourself, 21 years old, 22 years old, like knowing what you've just been through in the journey and what you're on now, like more of the same? What's the kind of advice that you'd give yourself?
Yeah, it's it's kind of maybe 2-part. One is take risks. And what I mean by that is not, don't be stupid, right? It's not go out like when there are intelligent risks and then there are, dumb risks. It's not like, hey, let's go jump off this bridge in the middle. No, not that. But it's, hey, I wasn't comfortable moving to another country for a job or whatever it might be. Like, do that, and then experiences, like, be relatable. Don't just stick yourself in a book and all that. You can study all you want, but it's what really, I think, builds better understanding, experience, and ability to build something in the future is, yeah, I've been on that trip, or I've seen that, or I've gone out into this. I stayed up all night with a friend, having beers one night, and just were able to chat through this. And like, that's the kind of stuff that really builds character.
So underrated and undervalued when you are at the bar with a friend or a client, you're in a meeting in an office, and you can just make small talk and go, oh yeah, and you can relate it to experiences and exactly. And it's small talk, and then it's just, and that's, I actually believe that makes the best salespeople as well. Absolutely. Those experiences. Cool. So kind of what's next? What, 2026, obviously first full year in the business, what's the plan? What's the focus?
I mean, we're still driving. We have early customers right now. It's kind of ramping that up. We're still a young business and building infrastructure around that. And there's a lot of partnerships and integrations that we've been working on that I think will just bring data in and make it more robust, and staying ahead of the curve of as this space evolves. But right now, it's just kind of growth of the business. I wish I had something crazy sexy to tell you. We've got a cool product and we're trying to build adoption.
Yeah, absolutely. And then if you could leave the listeners with one piece of advice in terms of a security tip, like what should we be doing this week?
That's a good question. I mean,
check your MCP servers.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's somewhat self-serving. Is there is a recognition that your company is starting to use AI much more frequently. Like, make sure you know how that's being used and what that means, and particularly when you've moved from, call it, self-contained AI agents that are embedded within a product or within your environment to, I now have an AI agent that connects to sensitive data and connects to my mail client or something of that sort. You've now expanded your attack surface. Do you know what that looks like? Do you know what's happening today?
Yeah, nice. I love that. Well, look, firstly, congrats on building and built and building with Helmet Security. I love to see it. I'm sure we'll see each other at RSA, if not sooner. But thanks for joining.
That sounds great, Josh. Appreciate it.
Thanks.